But Colonel Rohit Dev, the latest that we're also gathering is that Iran has now said that if you hit us, we'll ensure that the Gulf is engulfed in darkness, that it plunges into darkness because their energy infrastructure will be hit. Now, the Gulf nations, the Gulf allies of the United States, over the last 30 days have been warning Donald Trump that this is getting out of hand. And Donald Trump doesn't seem to care.
So I think there are two things here. Firstly, also Iran has recently in the last 1 hour also announced that no more talks through any channel with the US. That's a sort of a rebuttal coming now. But let me put it at perspective. There is a perception management and there is a power play. Perception management is at the global level and the power play at the internal level in the United States of America. The problem for Donald Trump is that because of his going on social media and trying to, impose his will through his voice, the perception has tilted largely in favor of A, Iran, B, by it being isolated by its own allies and the NATO, and especially the United Kingdom. What has happened is that the power play has shifted to Europe. Power play is shifting and gravitating towards countries like India and Russia. China is still being silent, but I think that is where the isolation in being of the United States of America has already started, and trust took so much time for many countries to build with United States, including India. To rebuild it takes more time. The power play part is the off-ramp part, and all of us understand with nearly about 130 days of oil reserves which USA can produce and sustain its own country. Because of the 865 million, they produce every day 13.7 million, they consume 20 plus million, they are at a deficit state. So there is no way Trump can look after the energy needs of Europe. Europe is going into winters in the next 5 months. The forward sales of energy have to happen on time, contracted and insured. That is not being done. So pressure is building up on that front as well. Now Trump has got two options. Like I agree with Jolly that the option is to bombard, he's got 120 days. But if he continues to for 120 days and bombards and destroys the country without a very negotiable off-ramp, he's again heading to the midterms with a gap of 3.5 months where he's going to lose again. So as far as he's concerned, and if you put yourself into his shoes, he maybe started this a little too early, but he needs to sustain the fervor of the MAGA kind of a badge which he carries till November at least. Otherwise, he's going to be gone and dusted. So the point is, if he's making that veiled threat, and just let's wargame that for just about 30 seconds. Say he nukes. And after he nukes, there is a perception which has gone totally against him across the globe, across the country. How does he justify in the next 5.5 months? What does he do beyond that to achieve the sort of support of the population of United States of America itself? So I think he's in a catch-22 today. And Iran, by all means, has all the capability still intact to strike American assets and the assets of its allies in the Gulf region. So that's not going anywhere. We already have murmurs on social media from a few handles you trust that Iran is also positioned its own critical good missile systems already in anticipation of this 8 p.m. Talk show by Mr. Trump. And dare I say, if Iran actually had nuclear weapons and the capability to impose that will, putting myself into Iranian shoes, I would have struck at American assets by now, given that critical threat which the President of the United States has said, emanating from hitting my infrastructure, already hit a couple of times, even the B1 bridge, talking about the 8 p.m. and hitting my oil reserves, which is the biggest oil reserve from where I export, and going on, I would have struck. So it's for people to see, because the perception will tilt in favor of Iran, because they will say, had Iran got the capability with so many caveats attached to President Trump's public utterances, why no action was taken? Because Iran was the wiser one. Iran was the more, the more perceived as the one who held back. And I think that is where the global perception battle hinges. But the critical factor is the power play within the United States, deflection and internal, whatever the economy. The stagflation, let me tell you, today in the United States is upwards of 4.7. Federal reserves do not permit more than 2. They're already dying in terms of that.
Correct.
You look at the GDP contraction. Every $10 barrel rise is 0.1 GDP contraction for the United States. So next time when you reach 116, already reached 116 once and twice, you go beyond 130, 140, and it prolongs for another 3 weeks. the contraction is by about 2.2 to 2.7% of the GDP. Can they take that hit? Even being a developed country, the answer could be a no. And then there is so much of investment which is held for the United States. No matter what money they have, what they control, but the investment into the critical infrastructure, the AI mode, the semiconductor mode, the data centers is not taking place.
Correct.
So while Google may come to India, to Visakhapatnam to invest, the similar investment into the continental US is not going to take place. So there are many flavors which Trump's advisors will tell him. One of the critical, I would say, nerds in the administration was Navarro, who probably kept quiet for the last 2 months, courtesy a lot of back channel talks between people from our region in India sitting with their diplomats and ex-diplomats. But the second one who's making very undue noises is Mr. Lindsey Graham. He needs to actually be quiet. And if he
needs to pipe down, and
if
as
he
many
pipes down,
then
then
other
maybe
people
who are saner in the White House can approach Trump and tell him, my dear friend, it's not an apprentice game that you're going to talk like this. There has to be an off-ramp. You tell us how we achieve it. Let somebody else manage the Senate thereafter. That's his best case internally, because he is getting a lot of
whether
flack.
Donald Trump is listening to any of his advisors or not,
No,
that's really the big question.